The play on the field, the court, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and vendors who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go behind the game with Patrick Klinger and Dave Boden.
Welcome to Behind the Game. I'm Patrick Klinger, president of Agile Marketing Partners. Alongside me, the Mr. Drysdale of banking in Minnesota. He's the president and the CEO of Highway Credit Union and my co-host and friend, Dave Boden.
Thank you, Patrick. I have not been called Mr. Drysdale before, so I appreciate that reference.
So
at least old guys like us will remember that. But I'm happy to be here and excited to introduce our guest today, local hockey legend, owner of Tom Reid's Hockey City Pub, Mr. Tom Reid. Thank you for coming today.
My pleasure.
And just to kick us off, you played in 743 National Hockey League games. You've broadcast thousands more. You've been involved in hockey forever. Tell us, do you still love the game the same as you always have?
Yeah, I do enjoy the game. The problem you have is there's a lot of downtime also when you're traveling, you're in hotels and you're waiting, your morning skates and all that. But the game itself, once the puck is dropped, it becomes much more real to me. Then you really start to have to hone in on what's happening on the ice and try to give a flavor to the game, which is kind of humorous at times and being critical at times also of the player or the play that they have made, and so it's fun to keep it informed. And I talk to people all the time about the game, and that's one of the reasons why I have the pub. I go in there a lot because people want to talk hockey, and I'm more than happy to do that.
You know, Tom, you played in the 1960s and 1970s.
Yes.
That's when you were in the NHL.
Yeah.
How's the game changed?
Oh my goodness, it has changed tremendously, and for the better. You look at the speed of it. You look at the protection of the players. You look at the surroundings. The old Met Center, people will come all dressed up in their best, Sunday clothes and so on. It's changed. The fans come in now. They're relaxed. They're casual. The noise level is so much greater. And you look at these buildings that are full, 18,000 to 22,000 normally in the National Hockey League. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but there's so much behind the scenes that you don't see. And I do see it because I've worked for such a long time, starting back in 1964 when I left home to play hockey. But the finesse of the players, the skill of the players is something to behold. And if you ever get a chance, just get down by the glass sometime and see how fast the game is. You're skating on very thin pieces of iron, I want to call it, with a blade, and you have to be prepared all the time because everything is moving so fast, and you've got to make decisions like right now. And you make the wrong decision, the puck's usually going to be in the net.
You played, as we mentioned before, 743 National Hockey League games, but your playing career ended early due to medical condition.
Yeah, that's when the team got sick of me, right?
Right.
Maybe
that's
not.
what I heard. No, but tell us about that experience and how you dealt with the emotions of leaving so suddenly. The game you loved, you grew up, you'd probably achieved a dream to get to the NHL and play. How did you?
It's interesting, Dave, because as a kid playing, I loved to play. And I was invited to go to the Chicago Blackhawk Junior Camp, which was in St. Catharines, Ontario. It's about 40 miles from Toronto, just down towards the American border. And I never really thought about playing in the National Hockey League. I wanted to be a recreation director, and I had applied to the University of Michigan to try and get a hockey scholarship because we didn't have a lot of money back in those days, and I got turned down. They didn't think I could make their team, so instead of playing for University of Michigan that year, I wound up playing for the Chicago Blackhawks. So that tells me they must have had a pretty good team at the University of Michigan. But it was always about having fun with the game, enjoying the game. And I tell parents that all the time, kids, just enjoy the game. And if you're good enough, you'll be found. There's scouts all over the place. Every team has probably got 30 scouts between full-time and part-time, and their own people that travel and watch things. They've got scouts all over the world. And the game was pretty well condensed to North America, and most of them from Canada at that time, the players. But that has certainly changed over the years, which is good certainly for the fans and for the players. But I went to St. Catharines to play. That was the Blackhawks farm team, And the first year was kind of rough. I was growing at the time, and I was really uncoordinated. But I stayed with it. Second year was a little bit better. And I can remember the coach actually taping my hands to the stick, because I always like to hold on with one stick. You get 2 hands on that stick. And he would do that for practices. And that third year, I had a pretty good year. I wound up making the first All-Star team in the OHA. It was at that time the Ontario Hockey Association, with Brian Glennie, who was another defenseman from Toronto. So we made that team. And even then, I didn't even think about going to the National Hockey League. And I thought, well, you know what? I got a letter inviting me, and I thought, if I don't try, I'll always regret it. So and I tell kids that all the time. At least try it. You might like it. If you don't just say, no, I'm not going to do that. Try it. It might be different. I don't care I haven't emphasized this. I want kids to do other sports too, to do other things, play the piano or play an instrument, or be a writer. There's lots of different things they can do, especially with the young kids coming in. So try it, and I gave it a shot, and I got traded. I got signed, I should say, by Chicago in 1967, and then a year and a half later, I got traded to Minnesota. I've been here ever since.
And to follow up on Dave's question, your hockey career really did come to an end in a sort of a strange way, in the sense that you had a skin condition that made you, if I'm correct, it made you allergic to your hockey equipment. Yeah,
and I apologize for not bringing that part of it up. That was a really tough time for me. I had played 8 years in the league of that, and I had a small area on my left bicep that was kind of itchy, and they put cream on it, and that seemed to go away for a while. And then all of a sudden it got to my side, and by the third year of doing this, I was, from my neck to my waist, I was covered, and I couldn't even wear clothing without putting a towel around me, because I was secreting a liquid that was devastating to my clothing, obviously. So, and it was tough, and I was taking cortisone shots. I was going to Marshfield, Wisconsin, and I'd be in the hospital for a week, and come out and play for 2 weeks, and go back in the hospital, and finally got to the point the doctor said, we can't find out what's causing it. We tried all kinds of testing with 3M and different companies, and tried changing the equipment. I actually took my equipment home, and I would wash my undergarments at home. And it progressively got worse. And finally, the doctor said, we can't give you any more steroids and stuff like that. And you'll be dead by the time you're 40. And I thought, well, that's not a very good thing to think about. So I think it's time to step away. So I did. I stepped away, and it was difficult, because we didn't make a lot of money in those days. And what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to work? But you know what? Yeah, you get yourself in a position. You just have to persevere and move forward with every day as another step forward.
Well, it might not have been the way you wanted to get there, but you've been working in broadcasting since the end of your playing career, doing games on television and now radio. How did you land behind the mic when you finished your career?
Dave, it's funny, because as a kid, I couldn't even speak in front of a class, like a book report and so on. I found I was just shaking. And I thought, once again, if I don't try it, I'll never know. And Walter Bush Jr., who was the guy responsible for bringing hockey to Minnesota in the days of the North Stars, called me and said, we're changing radio stations. We're going to KSTP. Would you be interested in doing a broadcast with Al Shaver, of course, Hall of Famer? And I thought, yeah, Al will help me. So I did it, and I did the radio for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden KMSP came into the fold, and they asked me if I would be interested in doing color with Bob Kurtz. And I said, great. And of course, Bob was doing a lot of the Gopher sports, doing basketball. He can do anything in sports related stuff. So we did that, and I was doing both radio and TV, because we didn't do a lot of television games back in those days either, in the early 80s. But now, everything is televised. And so I did that for a number of years, and Bob and I, we did Michigan State for a year or so, and I've done the NCAA, I've done all kinds of things. I've done women's hockey, I've done University of Minnesota women's and men's Gophers. I work with Frank Mazzocco. I've done a lot of games over the years, going back to that first time back in 1978. Don't ask me how many, because I have no idea.
Tom, as a former player, you understand better than most what goes on in the locker room and what is required for a team to be successful. How does that influence how you do color analysis when you're doing the game?
Yeah, I always talk about a team, and a team has to gel together. I say you can't have just the best players in the world on a team because it doesn't work. You can't take the chassis from a Mercedes and the engine from a Rolls Royce and tires from a Lamborghini. They don't fit. You got to get the pieces that fit together and fit well. And when I look at certain elements of a team, what's good for the team, what's bad on the team, how do they correct it if they can? Not everyone wants to be in the limelight all the time. I mean, you've got your stars of the game, but your first and second line are really important production-wise. You need goals for them. But when you get to your third and your fourth line, those are the pluggers that really make a difference, especially when you get to playoff competition. These are the guys that bring the energy, the physical play, and if you don't have those guys working for you, you're not going to win too many games. But it's all has to work together, and players talk so much more in what they have. I mean, they have iPads on the bench right now. They can see a play, what happened here. They have so many coaches. When we traveled, we had our team, we had a medical trainer, we had an equipment guy, and we had one coach, and that was it. Then we traveled commercial, and we got the hotel, the coach would hand out the keys, and we always had 2 to a room. And then, but we spent a lot of time together on the road also together. But it really has to be a blend of the right type of people, the culture they talk about all the time in that locker room to make a successful team.
So building on that and looking at the team and the broadcasting as you do now, how do you work this? Do you try to get to know the players well personally, or the coaches and teams, or do you prefer to keep a little bit of distance because of your objectivity as a broadcaster? Where do you find that balance?
Yeah, and there has to be a balance on that, Dave. I try to stay away a little bit more. I get to know the players a little bit, but not to the point that I'm in their business and their families and all that. I like to recognize them when I see them and talk to them a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 questions to them to find out what they're thinking, and then I kind of step away a little bit. There are some people that want to be around the players all the time. Sports, to me, it's like having a pail of water and you have a hand, and you put it in the pail of water and you move it around, and there's a lot of commotion and so on. But once your career is over and that hand comes out, that water smooths over like you have never been there before. And it's amazing the number of kids today who don't know Gordie Howe is, who don't know, the stars of the game from years past. We knew everybody as kids growing up. We collect the bubblegum cards, we used to have those, and then we put those in the spokes of our bike and make the noise like a motorcycle going down the street and things like that. But yeah, I want to keep a distance because I don't want to ever take a player and hurt him. I might say that the play is bad. That's a poor decision with the puck on that play. But you don't want to do something that is going to be detrimental to the player, because you want them to be able to talk to you, and you don't want them mad at you because that can create some problems too. So you try and be as honest as you possibly can. I think we've been able to do that. At least I've been able to do that, I think, for the most part.
Yeah. You started your broadcasting career with Al Shaver, as you mentioned.
I talked to him last week. He's 96 years old.
What a wonderful human being.
Oh, wonderful guy. He lives in Vancouver Island, in Qualicum Beach. And Bob Kurtz and I, when we played in Vancouver, we'd take the ferry across, rent a car, and we'd go up and visit with him for a day or so.
He's terrific. I got to know Al a little bit back in the day when I was with the Twins, and just a terrific human being.
Yeah.
As is Bob Kurtz, who was, then you worked with Bob for many years.
Yeah.
Also a brilliant talent in the booth.
Yeah.
Now you're working with Joe O'Donnell.
Yep.
So as a color analyst, how do you make the transition from one play-by-play announcer to another? Because each has their own style. And I assume that there's a little bit of an adaptation on your part to get used to their style, and they're getting used to yours.
Yeah, it's no different than a line of 3 or a defense pairing of 2. You have to get to know them a little bit more and what makes them tick and what they like to do and don't like to do. I've always maintained that the play-by-play guy is the most important guy in the broadcast, because he's got to call she has to call the action where it is. My job is to be able to filter in there when I know it's appropriate to do that. I don't want to step on him when he's talking. I try not to. And sometimes I'll just hold a sheet of paper up because he knows then I've got to do something. I have to read something, or I want to say something. And he'll stop, and when he stops, then I will step in. And I have to be precise, and I have to be quick, because from the time the whistle goes to the dropping of the puck is a very short window. So I've got to be fast enough that I can get my message across to the audience who's listening or watching.
So you've had a real lifetime in hockey, and you've seen it all from both sides, from being in the sport as a player and then looking outside. And Think about this, from back to when you started and were playing and to today, and salaries have grown exponentially since then, of course. And all the amenities for the players. They have charter flights and luxury hotel rooms and massage therapists and nutritionists and all those things, and everything is taken care of. And the idea of other jobs is probably crazy, right? So how have you seen that change? And then how do you think that affects sort of the team first and all together mentality from when you were playing earlier to now?
Dave, it's interesting because we never chartered unless it was in the playoffs. We might have a charter, but for the most part, it was always commercial. And I can remember being in Montreal one night, and we played the game. We always stayed over because we didn't have any planes going out at 11 o'clock at night when the game was over. And we had like close to 10 inches of snow that night in Montreal. And we got to the airport, and everything was delayed, of course. And we got there like 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 10:30 in the evening, we're still there. And we asked if we could get a couple hotel rooms just to get some rest, and they said, no. And I can remember going and asking for an orange one time on a Thursday because we had a game on a Friday. I said, can I get an orange? No, you can't get an orange. Those are for the game. We're not going to have. I said between period stuff. So it has changed now. And you know what? What people did before us helped us. What we did helped people along the way. And now it's getting to the point now it's so much better for the players, and much more better for the fans too, because the game has changed so much.
Well, back in your day, obviously, players didn't wear helmets, or it was rare, right?
Can you tell? Yeah.
There was smoking in the locker room. Literally, guys would smoke in the locker room, right?
Yeah. It was a race when the buzzer went after the first period or second period to get upstairs to get to the back room, our training room, which consisted of a pool table, a color TV. We had 2 tables. We had probably 8 chairs and maybe half a dozen ashtrays. And we had one of those belts you put around your waist and it jiggles you. That was what we had. We didn't have weights. We didn't have summer ice. We didn't have the things they have today. The technology and the opportunities these kids have today is tremendous. But I will tell you, these kids who play the game today have to work hard. Otherwise, someone's going to take their job.
Yeah. So you were talking earlier, just even before we started, about when you started, and you had to. And players did, even well-known players had to maintain a second job, whether it's a summer or part-time. And
oh yeah,
tell us about your story a little bit.
When I made the first All-Star team, and I never thought in junior, I never thought about playing the NHL. But then I get the letter, and I thought, well, I'm going to go and see what happens. And I had a good camp. And Tommy Ivan, who was the general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks at the time, called me into his office, said, we want to offer you a contract to play either in the NHL or the Central Hockey League at that time. If you play in the NHL, you'll get $10,000. Well, here's a kid who was making $55 a week in junior, and now all of a sudden they're going to pay me $10,000. And if I played in the minors, it was $5,000. So I said, where do I sign? And so right here, so I signed, of course. And if you hear a lot after you sign, I was out with Stan Mikita and Kenny Warren one night, a few days after I had signed the contract, and Stan said to me, well, how'd you do in your contract? I said, I did really good. He said, you did? I said, yeah. He said, how much did you get? I said, Mr. Ivan asked me not to say anything. He said, well, tell us, because it helps all of us in our negotiations. I said, I got $10,000. He said, you did? I said, yeah. He said, are you happy with that? I said, very much so. He said, that's the minimum. But I didn't know that at the time. But I said, you know what? It's not about the money. It's the fact that I'm here and I can say I played at least one game in the National Hockey League. And fortunately, I've gone a little bit more than that. But it's never been about the money. It's always been about enjoying what you do. And I enjoy every facet of hockey today.
Minnesota is the state of hockey. We've got a lot of hockey players who were born and raised here. They stay here when their career is done. There seems to be great camaraderie between the players of your era, where you stay connected, maybe even more than any other sport. Do you find that to be the case?
Yeah, I think hockey players, if you talk to people who are in the field of covering teams, say the hockey players are the easiest people to talk to get to know them and so on. Other sports don't have that. But I think it starts with the leadership of the organization. It starts right at the top of the ownership and the general manager and how they treat their product and how the players treat each other. It's a little bit different now Patrick, because there's so many different countries involved in playing. So the languages can be a little bit of a barrier at times, but you hope that some of these kids, and I look at Kaprizov, for example, from Minnesota, when he came over, he could speak English okay, not great, but okay, but he was uncomfortable in that setting. He's coming from a city, from Russia, going to a city in North America that had no idea how to order things or how to do things, and he's got to learn that. So you have to really kind of walk these people through it. And I think the leadership of this club, with Jarrett Spurgeon as the captain and their assistants, and now the Kaprizov an assistant, and you got Marcus Foligno. Those three guys really, and when you're talking to them, they kind of welcome the players into the fold. When they get to see a player is going to be traded to their team, they're the first ones to call them and say, welcome, we'll be there to pick you up, whatever you need, let us know, and we'll work through it as you try and work your way around the curves and to get from point A to point B, but it'll work for you, and it's been very good for Minnesota.
Right. A little more serious note, last week, Minnesota native Adam Johnson died in a freak accident with his neck cut by a skate during a game in England. What are your thoughts about how that might affect the game here in terms of equipment changes? I was looking at some of the pictures in your background, and of course I see everybody out there playing with no helmets, and I can't even imagine such a thing, and things have changed. But how do you feel that this accident might affect hockey in the U.S. and particularly in the NHL?
Well, if you look at the progression of the safety factors in the National Hockey League, for example, it's great. And unfortunately, it takes something sometimes tragically to happen to make a change. I've talked to people who have played in Europe, where they say, well, we had throat protectors, but what they said was uncomfortable, it restricts their breathing and their swallowing. And, I don't know, I've never worn one, so I'm just going by what they say. But they would actually cut it open, take the protective stuff from the inside, sew it back up, like they still have looks like you had something there. But if you look at the NHL, the glass is higher along the sideboards. Much higher. Fans used to be able to just grab on the glass, and you could talk to them. They'd sign autographs, they put it on the glass. We can't do that anymore. The netting at the end. You can't see the game anymore. Nobody even notices the netting anymore. The addition of helmets, mandatory, is great. Takes away from the concussions. The NHL has done an awful lot. The equipment's so much better. You very seldom see a goaltender get hurt by a shot anymore. Usually it's twisted a knee or an elbow or a shoulder or something like that, or a concussion because he gets run over, but it's not the shot. And so it tells you the equipment is so much better than it used to be, much lighter too, because our equipment was very, very heavy. And there's so many different stories, the funny stories that happen in the league. We have stories because we didn't have too much money, but we get together all the time. The players today, they can do whatever they want. They get home here and a home there. And John Mariucci once told me, he said, if you ever want to coach, he said, make sure you buy a house that has wheels, because you're going to be going all over the place. And he was so true.
Hockey is the only major sport where fighting remains. It's condoned. It's sometimes encouraged. It's less of a factor than it once was. Do you see a day when fighting will not ever be part of hockey?
That's a discussion that's been going on, Patrick, for years. And what I do know is that by having a release of dropping your stick and your gloves, if you do so, there's not too many players who've been hurt in a fight. Sometimes a guy will have get a broken cheekbone or something because he got hit by that. But I don't want them to have a weapon in their hand that they're going to spear somebody or chop somebody and so on. Do I enjoy the fight? Yeah, I do still. The most feared words in hockey is when the referee says, let him go, and the one guy doesn't want to fight. So, it becomes kind of comical. But I've seen it over the years. Very seldom have I seen a guy really get hurt in a fight. And I've seen a lot of games, believe me, thousands. So I don't mind it as long as it's fair, that you don't have the Broad Street Bullies were not fair because it was like a mass fight. When you got into a fight with one of them, you had to fight about 6 of them. So, but I just as long as it's fair, and they're very good about, if the helmet comes off, it has to stop, and they break it up in a hurry. And but the helmets have certainly helped the needless concussions that came about for so long. But for the most part, I'm okay with it right now.
So this is a tough one for all of us. Minnesota is the self-proclaimed, but I think accurate proclamation of the state of hockey. And neither the North Stars or the Wild have won a Stanley Cup. And we have high expectations in the state for our hockey teams. Does this put too much pressure on the Wild to finally win a championship, or the management, or are our expectations out of line?
Everybody wants to win the championship. Players want to win the championship. That's why they play. They play first off for the love of the game. For most of them, I'm sure about that. But there's only one winner. There's 32 teams. There's only one winner, and every team has 23 people plus the injured on their roster. So you're talking over, close to 1,000, 1,200 people. Each team has probably the minor league system too. They may have one or two teams in the minors. So there's a lot going on, but you want to win. You want grab that brass ring. You want to be able to hold on to it. Go for the gold. Winning look at 1980 when the U.S. won the Olympics. How much fun was that? And Herb Brooks, what he brought to the table. And Herbie wasn't well liked by a lot of his players, but you know what? He got them a gold medal. And a lot of those guys have thrived because of that. So, which is a good thing. But he was a very innovative coach. But everybody wants to win the cup. It's not so much of the monies when you step on the ice. You're not thinking about dollars and cents. You're winning about maybe helping the team to win that particular game because it's so important.
Tom, we're down to the last minute. One of the topics I wanted to bring up is a record that you have that will never be broken. You're the only player ever to get a penalty shot past Ken Dryden, Hall of Fame goalie.
Well, he might come back and play again. I don't know. You never know. Ken wasn't very happy on that deal. And people said, well, how did you get a penalty shot when you're a defenseman? I was coming out of the penalty box. And the puck was cleared out of the zone, hit my skate, and was going towards the other way. And I thought, well, I'm just going to go and follow it through. So as I get in over the blue line, Guy Lapointe, who was a scout for Minnesota Wild for a number of years, and a good friend of mine, he dove and he tripped me, and I slid into the boards, and Bruce Hood, the referee, said, are you okay? I said, yeah. I said, he's got a penalty, doesn't he? He says, not only that time, you got a penalty shot. And I said a few choice things to him, and I said, Bruce, no way. He said, you've got one, I've already committed a call. So I go back to the bench, and Jack Gordon was our coach. And in those days, they all wore fedoras, they all wore hats, And he said, what's going on? I said, I think they got a penalty. I wasn't going to tell him. I was hoping the referee would change his mind. He didn't. He finally Bruce came over to Jack, said, come on, Jack, we got to move it along. He said, well, what? He said, Tom's got a penalty shot. And Jack kind of froze, and he looked at Bruce, and he looked at me, and he looked back to Bruce. He said, does he have to take it? And I said, Bruce, I think I broke my leg. I'm not sure. He said, get out here now. It's going to be delay a game. So I go out there, and the ice is wet. It was October, and it was a 1-0 game, third period. Montreal's in town. Ken Dryden, all-star goaltender, Hall of Famer. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? And I was afraid the puck was going to stick. So I got in over the blue line. I kept going in, and I got set for the shot, but Ken wasn't quite set. And when I shot, he opened the pads and it went right between his legs into the net, and we wound up tying the game that time 1-1. But after I scored, I went back to the bench, and Jack was standing there, and I said, Jack, now was there ever any doubt in your mind? And he just kind of turned and walked away down the bench. But that's a great story. Yeah.
Fantastic. Tom Reid, thank you so much for joining us on Behind the Game. I could listen to your stories all afternoon. Mr. Drysdale.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks, Tom. It was great. Great to chat.
You were great as well. Yeah. If you get an opportunity, go down to Tom Reid's Hockey City Pub, one of the best restaurants in St. Paul. Always a fun time. Thank you all for watching Behind the Game, and we'll see you again next month.